Hi everyone, my name is Lily and I'm the book blogger behind Utopia State of Mind, and today I'm going to share with you some new authors to me that I really loved in 2021. So when I was thinking about my 2021 favorites, I was thinking about like the different categories that I want to put different authors and different books in. And so when I was doing like sequels, debuts, I kept having some authors that I had found that like weren't debuts but were new authors to me and also weren't sequels. So that's kind of how this category was born, and let's just jump into it. Hold on, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Of the 7, I only have 3 with me, unfortunately. Actually, I felt like I had all of them, but I don't know where they are, honestly, so these are the only ones I have, but I love them so much. So the first one is Lucia. I had never read any of this author's books ever before, and then this year I read Isle of Blenstone, Song of the Abyss, and Year of the Reaper, which I loved all of them like so deeply. And they're all on my 5-star list. Isle of Blenstone, Song of the Abyss, and Year of the Reaper. Like all of them so much. I only have Year of the Reaper to show now, but I have them all. I love them all so much. What I've loved so much about Makia's books, and also I think a common thread that I loved so much about all 3 of the books, because I won't talk about all of them in this one. There are some authors where I've only read 1. There are some authors where I've read multiple. Makia's just one where I've read 3 of them. So the common thread I think that I really love about these books is the blending between mystery and fantasy. I think that I can often read like books that are mystery or books that are fantasy, but I think all of Makia's books so expertly blend this line between mystery and fantasy, between kind of fantasy reveals or fantasy touches in the world, but then also having a very grounded mystery component. That is certainly how I felt with Isle of Blood and Stone, which is like a cold case mystery, and then Song of the Abyss, which is another mystery, and then Year of the Reaper, which is also kind of like a cold case meets current assassination plot mystery. So lots of mysteries. And so yeah, I had never read any of Makia's books before, and then I kind of just jumped into Isle of Blenstone and Song of the Abyss, and then ended up reading and loving Year of the Reaper. So as I said, if you really love this blend between mystery elements and fantasy elements, you have to read all of the 3 that I just mentioned. They are fantastic. Ooh, if I had to pick a favorite one, I think Year of the Reaper would be my favorite one. I just think that the 2 main characters, I think Lena and Cass. Yes, Lena and Cass might be my 2 favorite in the whole kind of repertoire of Makia's books that I've read so far. So if I had to pick one, I'd pick this one, but all of them are just so fabulous. And also if you want kind of a series starter / companion book in the same world with like similar characters, or the same character, it's kind of hard to describe, the same characters in the same world but kind of further along in the time point, but not the main characters from the other one, so it's not a direct sequel. Anyway, Isle of Blenstone and Song of the Abyss are the ones that you should read. The next one is Joy McCulloch. I only have read We Are the Ashes, We Are the Fire, but Blood, Water, and Paint is somewhere on my shelf. I'm trying to look where it is, because I was like, oh, in my old bookshelf setup, used to be right here, and now in my new bookshelf setup, I don't know where it is. Anyway, We Are the Ashes, We Are the Fire. This one was like, first of all, this is in verse. I'm pretty sure Blood, Water, and Paint is also in verse. We Are the Ashes, We Are the Fire just like ripped my heart out. It was so, you definitely should read the trigger warnings, and you definitely should read them before you start reading this book. But it is so fantastic. Blood, Water, and Paint is a historical fiction in verse novel, which is still on my TBR. I still want to read it, even more so after really loving We Are the Ashes, We Are the Fire. But We Are the Ashes, We Are the Fire takes place around M, whose sister was raped after a frat party. The jury found the attacker guilty on all counts, which was like pretty remarkable in like our really awful kind of sexist world. The judge finds the attacker guilty, but then sentences them to no prison time. So M is really very upset for obvious reasons. And in a clip, in an interview clip, she also tells the reporter that the sentence makes her want to learn to use a sword, which goes viral. So basically, this was a really fantastic book, but also kind of historically fiction. And also one of the reasons why I was like, whoa, I really love this, was that she finds the story of a 15th century French noblewoman, Marguerite de Brissot, legendary as an avenging knight for rape victims. So it's not only M's story, but there are like pieces of this other story interwoven. I can't remember like exactly how it's interwoven, but anyway, she finds this story. I think that I'm like looking right now. I think, yes. So I think that the story of the knight is in verse, but the story of M is not in verse. That's why I was like, oh, it's in verse, but then it's like it's not in verse. It's in this kind of verse prose hybrid. But I loved both of those different elements of We Are the Ashes, We Are the Fire, and it really talks about survival, it talks about resistance, it talks about rebellion, and it talks about anger, like all of these different things. Emotionally gut-wrenching. Definitely need to read it if you read the trigger warnings and this is still a book that you're really interested in. It was fantastic. And yeah, I loved the combination of like historical fiction meets contemporary. And now I really want to read Bloodwater Paint. The next one is somewhere between bitter and sweet. I listened to this one on audiobook and I was like crying while I was doing the dishes listening to this one. It is just like emotionally like got me. It emotionally took my heart and kind of just ripped it into little pieces and then glued it back together. It was so fabulous. Somewhere between bitter and sweet. I'm looking on my phone because I don't have a copy with me, but somewhere between bitter and sweet talks about two characters. I'm pretty sure it's dual perspective. I'm pretty sure we get to see both of their lives and like inner thoughts. It's Penelope and Xander. Penelope dreams of opening her own pasteleria next to her father's restaurant, but I'm pretty sure her dad doesn't want her to open a restaurant because he's like, this restaurant business is too difficult for you. She then confesses a secret she's been keeping and her world is set into a tailspin. She meets a new hire at Not Just Tacos, which is her father's restaurant, and then they get to know each other. And the new hire is Xander. Xander's been searching for a home his entire life, and he's hoping to find it at Not Just Tacos, like a found family aspect. And also, he's staying with his abuelo, and he wants to helpfully find the father who left him behind. At the same time, though, Xander's immigration status is threatened, and then he will do whatever it takes to protect his newfound family and himself. So that is kind of the backstory between Somewhere Between Bitter and Sweet. But I think what really struck me in Somewhere Between Bitter and Sweet is how emotionally devastating, how emotionally heart-wrenching this book is, because it asks a lot about family and individuals and dreams and community and justice and fairness, like all of these different things. There are so many things that I like can't talk about in Somewhere Between Bitter and Sweet, what I want to. But it was one of those books where I read it and I was just like immediately obsessed. I immediately knew it was going to be a 5-star read because I really loved Penelope and her having to wrestle with this relationship between her and her family, specifically her dad as well. And Xander's struggle trying to find his father, that one particularly rang true or resonated with me. But also the ways that their lives intertwine, and specifically the way that their relationship unfolds, their friendship and their like getting to know each other. And also then there's all of these different like threads in the story about immigration status and community and found family and sacrifice, like all of these different things that kind of interweave into the story that was so amazing. And if you really like a story about family and dreams and like expectations we have about family and expectations we have of ourselves, then you definitely read Somewhere Between Bitter and Sweet. It was one of those books where I was like, yep, I love it. And so I'm really excited actually for the latest release from this author, which is not, of course, like the latest one here, but I think it's Heartbreak Symphony. Yeah, Heartbreak Symphony. Very excited for that one. So like, it's made it onto my kind of auto-buy status. The next one is She's Too Pretty to Burn, which is a picture of Dorian Gray retelling in a contemporary queer setting. So basically, the picture of Dorian Gray is a book that has a lot to do with obsession, and it has a lot to do with like those heavy emotions and obsession and friendship and relationships. So in She's Too Pretty to Burn, it is a romance set against a rebel art scene which sparks lethal danger for two girls in this expertly plotted YA thriller. Yes, She's Too Pretty to Burn is definitely more thrillery than A Picture of Dorian Gray. I think A Picture of Dorian Gray has a lot of mystery, like fantasy elements. And so basically it takes place over a summer and it's winding down. It's set in San Diego. Veronica is bored, caustically charismatic, and uninspired in her photographer. Nico is insatiable, subversive, and obsessed with chaotic performance art. They're artists first, best friends second. But that was before Mick. Delicate, lonely, magnetic Mick, the perfect subject and Veronica's dream girl. Days are long and hot, and soon they are falling in love. Falling so hard they never imagine what comes next. 1 fire, 2 murders, 3 drowning bodies, 1 suspect, 1 stalker. This is a summer they won't survive. So it's not a direct retelling of The Picture of Dorian Gray. It's more like a re-inspiration, reimagination of A Picture of Dorian Gray, because there's like art, there's obsession with a subject, there is certainly a lot of like obsessive psychological kind of stuff within She's Too Pretty to Burn, but it also is queer. And it was just one of those books where I couldn't really stop reading it, and after I was reading it, I was like, whoa, this book just completely took me on an emotional roller coaster in like the absolute best way. So much so that kind of like how with Somewhere Between Bitter and Sweet, now I'm really excited for Dead End Girls, which is Wendy's next book. This one was just so, I've always heard this term compulsively readable, but that's kind of how I felt about it. It was like it's a thriller, right? So a thriller was so readable and it made me keep wanting to read it. But I'm a really big fan of the ideas in A Picture of Dorian Gray, and I've also never seen a reimagination or retelling of A Picture of Dorian Gray. Please leave it below if you have, because I need to read them. But anyway, that was one of the reasons why I was drawn to this one, and I really, really loved it. The next one is How Moon Fuentes Fell in Love with the Universe by Raquel Vasquez Gilliand. I have really been eyeing Cia Martinez and the moonlit beginning of Everywhere or Everything because it was sci-fi, which I didn't even know when I first saw the cover, because I guess I wasn't paying that much attention. But then someone was like, oh, it's sci-fi, and I was like, oh my god, what? But then I didn't get to reading it. But I ended up reading How Moon Fuentes Fell in Love with the Universe, and I adored this book so much. It is so much about sisters and so much about like trying to figure out who we are in relation to our family. For synopsis time. When her twin sister reached social media stardom, Moon Fuentes accepts her fate as the ugly, unwanted sister hidden in the background, destined to be nothing more than her sister's camera woman. But then she goes along with her sister on this like social media tour bus kind of show thing. And she is the merch girl on the tour bus, but she also has fantastic artwork, which isn't in the synopsis, but I'm just telling you. And she then is bunked with her notable nemesis, Santiago Phillips, who is grumpy, combative, and also the hottest guy that Moon Fuentes has ever seen. Moon is certain she hates Santiago and certain he hates her back. So like, I don't know if you can see where this is going. But as chance and destiny bring the two of them in each other's perpetual paths, Moon starts to wonder if that's really true. And she also starts to wonder what her destiny is, and could this summer change Moon's life as she knows it. So I think what I loved about How Moon Fuentes Fell in Love with the Universe, first of all, is how it challenges fat phobia. So one of the things I loved about How Moon Fuentes Fell in Love with the Universe is Moon's character. I think Moon is going through a lot of changes where she really has to rethink herself in relation to her family, in relation to her sister, and kind of in relation to their expectations of her. I think we can get so wrapped up in what our family thinks of us and then kind of filters back to us, that I think How Moon Fuentes Fell in Love with the Universe is such an important story about tackling that and combating that, and like having someone in your life that sort of like maybe sparks that thing where they're like, that's not true, right? And then all of these kind of emotional upheaval start. That is certainly the number one reason why I loved How Moon Fuentes Fell in Love with the Universe. The romance is also so fabulously done. I don't know if you can tell, but it's kind of like a perceived enemies to friends kind of thing. But I really loved it so much. And I also love how like Moon really has to struggle to establish limits and boundaries, and like sticking up for herself is a huge theme. It's a theme that like I'm trying to channel on a daily basis. And so How Moon Fuentes Fell in Love with the Universe was one of these books where I was just like, Moon, you have like scooped my heart out, and as a character you have run away with it. You are just so endearing and empathetic and relatable and flawed and charismatic and all of these different things I love about main characters. And Moon was like a heroine I kind of like instantly fell in love with. And now I'm even more like, I need to read Cia Martinez so badly. The next one is We Can Be Heroes, and We Can Be Heroes is a book that really tackles gun violence, it tackles grief, and it tackles kind of like activism, I guess. So basically, these three girls, Beck, Vivian, and Cassie, they live in this town where like the main business of the town is a firearms factory. And their best friend, Cassie, and their mutual friend, because like they're not best friends, Beck and Vivian, Cassie was like the string that held them both together. Cassie is murdered, and then together Beck and Vivian finally find common ground in vengeance. They start to secretly paint murals of her around town as Greek figures. So I think she's like as Helen of Troy. I think she is a few other like Greek figures, which I can't remember because it's been a while since I read the book. But anyway, they also find out that as they're like driving around in Beck's VW bus, they also find Cassie's ghost with them. So it's definitely like a contemporary, very much grounded in contemporary, but also has a fantasy element to it. And so when their murals catch the attention of a podcaster, they become the catalyst for a debate that Bell Firearms can no longer ignore. So obviously there's like, they're doing kind of illegal things, but it's for activism because like the town has completely kind of moved on from this murder. This was a book that like wrung my heart out, basically. I loved it so much. I became like possessed by their rage because like, oh my God, it's not only about gun violence and sort of firearm sort of purchasing, but it's also about like domestic violence, which isn't really necessarily put into the blurb. It's about like domestic toxic relationships, and how all of these different ways that the system has failed Cassie, like law enforcement, societal, community, like family, friends, school, all of these different ways that society has failed Cassie. Like the rage when reading We Can Be Heroes was just, it's over my head. But it ends, and the murals and the artwork and the friendship story, not only between Beck and Vivian, but also between Cassie's ghost and her, like all of these things just so beautifully came together in such a heart-wrenching story, which is so powerful and poignant though, and the ways that like money and corruption and all of these different things and like taking a stand, all of this different stuff. Like it had, as I said, it has activism, it has friendship, it also talks about justice, and it just is one of these books where like the rage level was super high for me, and I find that a lot with books I read. But in this one, the resolution and the way that like the plot was organized and kind of led up to and then led down from, or however you want to describe it, was so emotionally satisfying. Like it was emotionally upsetting, but also emotionally satisfying. And some of the things that I get really upset while reading aren't necessarily that way. But for example, We Can Be Heroes and We Are the Ashes, We Are the Fire were both the same thing, where it's like emotionally very rage-inducing, but also emotionally very satisfying, like the ending for the characters, the kind of resolution in the book. Even though I would say that in both of these, there isn't like perfect resolution. It's not like a sugar-coated kind of ending where it's like, and then everyone realized that they were being awful people and they all changed their ways. You know, it's not like that. It's very much kind of a realistic ending for both of these things, but the emotional anguish was, you know, ended up being emotionally satisfying. It's a very difficult way to describe it, but anyway, that is how I'm going to describe it. And the last one is Everything Within and In Between. This one was fabulous because this one takes place with Ree. Ree is the main character. She's like been told her entire life, we live in America and we speak English. Raised by her strict Mexican grandma, Ree has never been allowed to learn Spanish. What's more, her grandmother has always pushed her away from the neighborhood they call home, and also like a former best friend, and she's not exactly sure what happened there. But then Ria's always kind of hoped that her mom would come back into the picture because she disappeared when she was young, but like there's also a lot of mystery, a lot of secrets about why that is. And so then she finds a secret unanswered letter from her mom begging for a visit, and so she decides to reclaim what her grandmother has kind of pushed away from her. So basically a language, Spanish, and her mother. All of these different things culminate in a very, very emotional kind of set of dominoes falling, where it's like family secrets and then feelings of abandonment, and also like family that chooses you is huge, like, because it's also like we can't necessarily choose family, but our family can choose us. Does that make any sense? Our family can choose to be there for us. Our family can choose to support us. And like, just because we're family by blood doesn't necessarily mean that much. It's also about family who make the effort to choose us. That is like, you know, that's the best way I can describe it. But I also really loved how this resonated with me because like searching for long lost family will always resonate with me as a transracial adoptee. But I think what I really loved about Everything Within and In Between is that Ree is really forced to like contend with a variety of issues. The first one, which is her being kind of disconnected from her heritage and her community, and also from her former best friend. Like those, I guess, 1.5/2 issues are really well developed in the way that she has to, like, you know, she struggles with Spanish and everyone kind of assumes that she speaks Spanish, but, you know, she doesn't speak Spanish, and it's really hard for her to overcome that and to grapple with these expectations people have of us and we have of other people. And then secondly, what has happened with her best friend or her former best friend, and how that ties into her family drama, into her life, into everything. You will find out if you read it. And the third one, which is obviously the most emotionally gut-wrenching, was her and her mom and her grandma, this kind of triangle between them. It's all about these like flawed decisions and mistakes we make with our own, in this case, the grandma and the mother, so her own daughter, and then also vice versa, Ree's mom and her, right? So there's all of these kinds of intergenerational mistakes and secrets and trauma and past and history, like all of these different things between all three of them, but also specifically how Ree kind of navigates her relationship between her mom and her grandma and all of these different things. Like, they were so fabulously developed. Everything Within and In Between is a huge recommendation if you really love kind of that aspect specifically. I think it really delves into, yeah, the secrets that we keep from our loved ones, and that's definitely why I really loved Everything Within and In Between. These were all the kind of new authors to me that I really loved in 2021, because as I said in a while, like in a video way back ago, I feel like most of my reading is actually debuts or like authors I'm already familiar with and love. So this new to me author category, it was actually a joy to discover that I even had enough for, because it's kind of fun to discover like authors and books that you may have seen but didn't get to read, and then you read a different one, or like authors that you never heard about and then you discover a new favorite. Fabulous. I hope that you enjoyed this like latest 2021 favorites video. We're getting to the end. I promise we're getting to the end. We just have like 1 or 2 more videos. So thank you so much for joining me. Please leave a new to you author that you discovered in 2021 below, or picture of Dorian Gray retellings below, or also video ideas that you might want to see from me in the future below. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!